Koine, and welcome to Parsing John. Today we are starting our second page of this last paragraph of John chapter 1. We are going to do verse 46 today. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the rubric, everything that we're looking for as we go through this text. And here is our Greek. Kai e pen autoi Nathanael ek Nazaret dunatai ti agathon einai lege autoi ho Philippos arku kai ide. That's as far as we're going to go today. Here we have Nathaniel again, which if you recall from previously is an indeclinable word, so we can't really tell what case he is. I'm going to have to write that down first. But considering that it was Philip who spoke beforehand, and he, as we can tell from this verb, which is a third person singular with epsilon nu, Philip is done talking, and now it looks like because this is from lego ero epon, Nathaniel is probably going to be responding, so Nathaniel will be our subject. Third singular, aorist because it's from the third principal part, active, indicative. Kai just means and. Autoi, yeah, since we have the sub iota right there, we know this is dative, singular. It could be masculine or neuters, but since we have Philip in verse 47, it's going to be masculine, referring back to him as an indirect object. Nathaniel said to him, direct discourse, so quote marks right there. Ek Nazaret, dunatai is our verb, at least I think it is our verb. Brain is failing. Yes, tai is our ending. This comes from dunamai, so this is the deponent verb, mai sai tai. Third singular present deponent indicative. And this means is, since we have this semicolon right here, we know this is a question, so we should try to form this as a question. Is it possible? All right. One other thing to note here, we've actually got two accent marks on dunatai. We've got the natural accent mark of dunatai. Since we have alpha iota here, which is a short diphthong, the accent will be able to move as far back as it wants to. So this is the ultima, this is the penultima, this is the antepenultimate syllable, and that's as far back as an accent can go naturally. And since we've got the last one, the ultima, as short, the accent will naturally go all the way over to the left on this verb. But we also find an additional accent mark right there. And the reason we have that is because we have an enclitic word right before it. At least I think enclitic is the correct word. T is giving dunatai an accent. That's what happens when we have something like this, or enclitic pu, for instance. They will take their own accent and they will give it to the word before them if the spacing of the syllables works. And the only times that this is possible is if the natural accent of the preceding word is as far back as possible, and the last syllable, of course, can accept it, which we have exactly right here, which is really cool. And that just doubly confirms for us that we've got a question here, because T is only enclitic when it is a question, not when it is relative. I forget what other form of T there is. Anyway, T here is nominative or accusative singular, and it's neuter. And it means anything, I believe. It would be anyone if it were masculine or feminine. All right, let's go back to the beginning, though. We've done our verb, and we've taken a look at this very interesting accent right there. Ek is a preposition. Nazaret, since we have a verb immediately after it, has to be the object of ek. We already know that Nazaret is irregular and indeclinable. Ek normally takes the genitive, though. From Nazareth, is it possible anything, and then we would go all the way over to einai, which is our verb in what I believe is an indirect statement right here with T agathon, because we've got accusative and accusative. Ane is our present active infinitive. We'd normally translate this as to be, and then we would want a predicate for T to be linked with by this linking verb. That's what we have here at agathon, which is another accusative singular neuter, or technically nominative. Now, I'm treating both of these as accusatives because we've got ane here, and I'm not taking T as the subject because ane, of course, rambling now, sorry. So dunatai is its own clause, and T agathon ane is a different clause introduced by dunatai. Good. So we want to reorder this. Now the way to make the sound best in English is to make the main verb here, dunatai, and put it back at the beginning of the sentence. And we'd say, is it possible for to introduce, or that to introduce the indirect statement? Is it possible for, or is it possible that anything is, we say anything from Nazareth is good. Changing the infinitive to an indicative because English doesn't normally have its indirect statements with an infinitive. Instead, we like to use an indicative. It sounds better to us. All right, so that's as far as that. Let's go on. Lege, epsilon iota here. We've seen this a bazillion times before. This is a third person singular, and it is present active indicative. And this looks like it's ending our direct quote. Put that there with a question mark. He says, autoi sub iota. We've seen this one before multiple times in the recent verses. This is dative, singular, and Nathaniel is going to be our referent, our antecedent for autoi here, so masculine, to him. Ho Philippos, omicron sigma here is our subject form nominative, singular, masculine. Ho is in these brackets because it doesn't appear in the either in the earliest forms of this text or it doesn't appear in most of the texts. So I'm just going to ignore that, but I've left it in there so that you are aware it does exist in some versions. Philip, so we can cross out he, says to him, another direct discourse here. Arku kai ide, and that's as far as we're going to go. Looks like new subject. This is going to end this direct statement. Erku, it's from erkomai, so this is deponent. Omicron upsilon here is our ending, and that is going to be second person singular off of the present tense stem, first principal part. Present deponent, and this is imperative. For those of you who know, you'll understand this. Eusansai, and that's how we know. Come, kai, and ide we've seen beforehand. I believe first time that we looked at it, I only gave a little bit of information about it. We didn't actually look at its form. That might be wrong. Sorry if I am. This is another second person singular naturally because erku is. So second singular, and it is built off of the aorist stem, and it is active in form and imperative, of course. This means see, or if you're taking it from oida rather than adon, no. But normally we would take it as see. So that's the more probable. And there we go. That's as far as we're going to go today. Let's take a look at it in its own context. And Nathanael said to him, is it possible for or that anything from Nazareth is good? Question mark. Philip says to him, come and see, or come and know. And there we go. Let's take a look at it at its greater context from verse 43. Let's get that out of the way. And here we go. On the next day, he wished or wanted to have gone into Galilee, into the Galilee. And he finds Philip. And the Jesus says to him, follow me. And or but the Philip was from Bethsaida, from the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip finds the Nathanael, and he says to him, what Moses wrote in the law, and, remember that this is implied here, what the prophets wrote. We have found Jesus, son of the Joseph, the one from Nazareth. And Nathanael said to him, is it possible for anything from Nazareth? Is it possible that anything from Nazareth is good? Philip says to him, come and see. So there we go. That's the entire context of this paragraph. Now, the last thing that we want to do is we want to take a look and see if there are any proper nouns here without articles. Then we want to figure out which translation makes more sense with an indefinite article or with no article at all. I believe our track record for this paragraph is only the word son, which is not technically a proper noun, but only the word son makes sense with a indefinite article. Everything else, it didn't work. So we look here. Nathanael doesn't have an article this time. It did previously, but we needed that article there to tell us what case he was, so we knew what was going on. Now we need to treat it as these two different options. And a Nathanael said to him, or and Nathanael said to him. So if you have a Nathanael said to him, then that would imply that there's more than one Nathanael in the area, which everything from verse 43 does not give that indication at all. And it would also be confusing. Why wouldn't you want to be more specific about which Nathanael is talking to you, and why wouldn't you introduce the Nathanael before then? So indefinite article here does not float, if you will. All right, Nazareth, there's no article with that, so we need to treat it the same way. Is it possible that anything from a Nazareth, or is it possible that anything from Nazareth is good? So, as I said, I believe earlier when we ran into Nazareth and when we ran into Bethsaida earlier, an indefinite article doesn't make any sense because we only have one Nazareth and we only have one Bethsaida, at least though that I am aware of. It is quite possible that there was more than one place named Bethsaida, but Nazareth is a region. It's not a town, or at least I think it's a region. It includes more than just one town, and that makes far less sense than Bethsaida. I can acknowledge the possibility that more than one town in the ancient Middle East could be called Bethsaida, but a region, if my memory is serving me about this, that's too much. Let's move on. Philip. Now, in certain versions, it does have the article, but in certain it doesn't, so we still need to treat it the same way. So we have, a Philip says to him, or Philip says to him. Exact same problem as Nathanael. So far from verse 43, only one of each of these guys have been introduced, and there's been no distinction. There's been no distinction made that there could be others, and how we would even tell them apart. So indefinite article, still nonsense. Moving forward, we have no other proper nouns in here, so we are done. We have taken a look at all of them, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit frustrated by it. I don't know why. But thank you very much for joining me. I hope taking a look at verse 46 has been helpful for you, and I hope you continue along with me. Have a good day.